Welcome to Snow Talk, where the Snow and Ice Management Association brings you trends, stories, news, and personalities that are shaping the professional snow and ice management industry. This season of Snow Talk is sponsored by Western, Fisher, and SnowX, so settle in and let's talk snow.
When plowing is your profession, it's up to you to keep the world moving through winter's worst. Less time worrying about your equipment is more time for clearing lots. So we'll cut to the chase. Only Western builds efficiency into every feature of our plows and spreaders. With 65 years of experience behind us, we know what it takes to save time and stay profitable. So we make one promise: more jobs done faster.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Snow Talk, Simon's podcast on all things snow and ice, where we look forward and look to opportunities to amplify our members' stories and what makes our industry so special. I'm Evan Newman, and I'm excited to be joined today by Mikhail Ter-Grigoryan. For today's episode, Mikhail and I will be talking about some things going on in his neck of the woods in Concord, Ontario, Canada, where he is president of Just for Snow Property Services. He has worked to build a thriving business over the last handful of years by promoting best practices and looking at non-traditional and innovative strategies to engage not only his team, but his clients. Mikhail, welcome to the Snow Talk studio today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. We're excited to have you. We were just talking about some snow that you all have had in Ontario this past season, and we're excited to learn a little bit about how you all have responded to that this year, but also how, it's going to shape your strategy for the future.
Yeah, it was a big storm, and typically, like what I call it, this is a super peak.
Right.
In this business, you prepare for your peak, you prepare for, the highs and the low season as well, which is super important. We can maybe touch on that and how to maximize your low season, but there is also a super peak, and we haven't seen a super peak in our market in the last 3 years, but you can capitalize on a super peak. And for us, that means bringing enough revenue, enough opportunities for pretty much the entire rest of the year. So it is a short period. It's a 2-3 week period, but last time around that we had this, we weren't prepared. We weren't able to capitalize. Our service quality wasn't there. We had some major failures as well. This time around, we were ready, able to capitalize, and you can make a lot of ground in your marketplace in your super peak. And it's something that you may but you may not see in a few years. But when you do see it, and if you are one of the few companies that is prepared for it, you can capitalize in a major way. So maybe we could touch on that. But yeah, it was good. It was good for business for sure.
Yeah, that's good. I'm excited to hear it. And I'm excited to learn a little bit about how that super peak has maybe set you up for future success. But before we jump into that, what drew you to the snow removal and property service industry? And given that this is often kind of an overlooked segment of the industry and how folks get into it, you were telling us in our prep call that you're just looking to uplift people and uplift people within it. So why is that? How does that play back into the snow removal industry?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I was thinking about it this morning. I've been in the industry now for over a decade, which seems a little bit unbelievable because back when I was getting started, it was just, okay, what can I get into that is going to be low cost, easy barrier to entry? And by barrier to entry, I mean, putting 2 lawnmowers in the back of my dad's Honda, no cost to enter the industry. I was working at the bank at the time, and I remember just, trying to get out of that environment and trying to get out of what I was currently in. Didn't really like that environment at all and wanted to have more meaningful work with my hands, make an impact in my own personal life, just for me, starting with me personally. And so started the business, literally just a couple lawnmowers, and off we went. So that was just over 10 years ago. And for the first 6 years of that process, didn't really invest a lot into education, just sort of went with, let's work as hard as we can. Let's put as much effort as we can forward. And let me try to look outside of this industry for as many opportunities as I can. So I continuously kept looking outside of the industry for things that were right for me and right for my life and my business. Why? Because everybody around me was telling me, hey, this industry is a dead end. This is not a place that you want to be and you want to grow, especially as somebody who, has had a university education. I was in university actually at the time when I started, dropped out. That obviously set off a bunch of alarm bells where, okay, you're now going down the completely wrong path of dropping out of university to join this industry that is completely left field of what you've been studying. And this is essentially a dead end. That was essentially the sentiment around me from my teachers, from friends, family, and a lot of people approach that with the best intentions, but it doesn't necessarily mean that what they're saying is true and is right for you. So the first 6 years of that, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, we grew a small company that obviously was not operating well, was not run well, and the environment was indicative of what everybody else was telling me that just wasn't good. It was a self-manifesting prophecy, essentially. So I can't say that the business was great the first 6 years. We weren't making any money, and the environment that I was in was not good because that's what I created and that's what I knew. So after that period, right around 2020, when the other things I was involved in kind of took a crash, I refocused on the industry and I said, okay, let me give it 3 years. Let me give it 3 years and let me put both feet into it, ignoring what everybody else is saying and ignoring all the other ideas and all the other businesses that I had started at the time because they basically all went to zero. Let me put both feet in. And it was a difficult spot to be in because at the time, 6 years in business with $0 to my name, I ended up taking everything that the company had at the time, moving back to my parents' house, and I had a little shed in the back of my parents' house, and that's basically where the business was after 6 years of operating. One truck and a little, 10 by 8 shed where all of our stuff was. So that's what you have to show for 6 years of hard work. And hard work was like 6-7 days a week. So I know how hard guys in this industry work. And sometimes it's not just about what you're putting in. Sometimes it's also about, how you're going about it. So that's what changed after 6 years. Took the time to get educated in the business. Took the time to join certain organizations like SIMA. Took the time to find the information and find the other people in the industry. And most importantly, to take it seriously. So straight off the bat, if you're in this industry and you're not taking it 100% seriously, you're doing yourself a massive disservice. Because even if you want to do something else after, whatever you're doing today at 100% is going to help you do the next thing tomorrow. So that right now, the opportunities that have opened up for me in the last 4 or 5 years from that journey have been fantastic. But all of it stemmed from just taking some time to get educated, to learn about the fundamentals and the foundation, and apply that in the business. And it's been fantastic ever since. But really, it's been the last 4 or 5 years of growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a really cool part of the story and something we're going to dive a little bit further into in today's episode. One thing you had mentioned to me and you kind of touched on here, but during our pre-call, you said, hey, join SIMA, took a look at best practices, took a look at best, standards. I joined other organizations, took a look at their best practices and standards. And you said, hey, there was a need for me to retrofit them maybe or mold them into what I needed for my business. And I think that's important to note when we talk here. We often get fans of SIMA on the podcast that say, hey, here was my business before and after SIMA, but not often do we hear that feedback of, hey, I had to retrofit a few things because not everything's the same in my market than maybe what best practices and standards are. Maybe things just needed refreshed to meet where I was wanting to go in my growth trajectory. So tell our audience, what's this mean exactly whenever you say, hey, I'm taking a look at how I retrofit these best practices to fit my small company to grow into what I want it to be in 5 to 6 years? You said, hey, this last 5 to 6 years has really been your launch point for future success and you jumping both feet in. What's that mean though? What's that retrofitting and molding it not only to your goals, but also to your people? What's that mean?
Yeah, you know what? I think it also is industry specific. I found in this industry that innovating on top of a good foundation, a strong foundation of best practices is what's worked well for us. In the other businesses that I was involved in, it was really innovation first. I had a food company before this and we were involved in sales and HVAC and media and a couple other things. And it was really an innovate first type of approach. Get into an industry right away. You're trying to disrupt and innovate and do something completely different. With this industry, I find that, having that foundation of the best practices is what's going to set you up for success right in the beginning. And it's going to guarantee your linear growth. And it's actually absolutely necessary. And that's what we found. So right away, right from the beginning, okay, we're trying to innovate a new campaign, a new idea, a new marketing tactic, a new software, but there's no foundation for you to apply those things to, especially with an industry that's been around for so long and has such well worked through practices. So the foundation is important. It helps you benchmark with the other companies in the industry and really helps you with that linear growth. And we focus a lot on that within the company because linear growth is extremely important and is very predictable. It's really a key to know where you're going to be next year and be able to chart that and predict that. Okay, we're here. If we apply these things, and by best practices, I mean, hey, we're going to have a process for our sales, our proposals. How does that work? How do other companies in the industry do that? I remember talking to one of the pros at Cymax, and I was like, hey, what's your process for sending a proposal? He goes, great, let me tell you this, then we do this. And I was like, wait a minute, we're doing 2 out of those 10 things, right? Okay, so let me apply some of those things and let me apply that process. Once I have that process laid out, once I have the foundation laid out, then I can look at it and say, okay, now how can I innovate on top of this? How can I do something different on top of this? How can I, have a piece in here, whether it's an add-on or we're removing a piece and putting something else in there that is new and that is unique, but at least I know that this process that I already have in place is extremely solid. It's what a lot of the best guys in the industry are already doing, and it's already at a top tier. And the way that we do this within the company is we establish a version 1, version 2, version 3 type of methodology. So version 1 for us with everything is, hey, let's get the foundation right. What are other top players in the industry doing? Coaches, how can we learn and adopt some of these fundamentals? And that's going to guarantee our linear growth, where we know that next year we're going to continue to grow and we're going to establish that pipeline. Then from there, we layer in the exponential growth. And exponential growth for us is a new campaign, a new idea, a new way of doing things, a new piece of the process, a new software that somebody's not implementing in this way. Potentially it's a combination of those things. And we'll intentionally sit down and talk about linear growth. If I say linear growth within my company, my guys are going to know exactly what I'm talking about. They're going to, okay, it's A plus B. Exponential is A times B. How can we grow this thing in a quantum way? When we talk about quantum, we're talking about 10x. We sat down with our company who said, how are we going to grow this thing 10 times? It's not going to be through the best practices. The best practices are going to get you to double your business, to establish a solid foundation, to build a strong team, to build a strong pipeline. But to go and grow this thing 10 times or to go on a trajectory that we're on, it's going to require a couple things. One of which is new thinking and new ideas, which a lot of times you need to get out of your team and get out of yourself. You need to encourage those things to happen. And we do this by doing offsite events, by having certain intentional meetings and conversations about this stuff, by establishing a certain process and then saying, okay, this is good. Now let's just look at it from a zoomed out perspective, from a blank slate, and trying to consistently evaluate the things that we're doing in the business to inject new ideas, new thinking, and new strategies. And those are extremely important for achieving exponential growth, which we have seen. However, you don't need to do 1,000 things in an innovative way to have this type of growth. You need to have a strong foundation of these benchmarks and then innovate on a few key areas that are going to be your core competency as a business, as an organization, and your unique strength. These 3 things are us. Here's our secret sauce. Okay, and we're going to continue innovating on those things where us compared to anybody else in these 3 or 4 different areas, it's not even a conversation. And that's, I think, how you spark that growth and you innovate on top of a strong foundation in this industry, which I think has worked pretty well for us.
Yeah. It sounds like it. And it sounds like it's something you're passionate about. It. One thing you said in your breakdown of how you've evolved some of those best practices and built upon and innovated maybe 1 or 2 or 3 key areas within it. You mentioned going to your people, pulling out of your people and your clients, what kind of they were looking for you to level up, not just saying like, hey, I'm the owner, I'm president, I know what's best, but going to your people, the front line to say, how do we level up? So what other things would you suggest new companies do in this space to continue to pull that out of their people, to understand, where does that start? I guess what I'm getting at.
Yeah. There's a great book. It's called How to Make a Few $1 Billion. And he talks about, oh my gosh, the author's name is escaping me, but he talks about, these are the guys behind United Rentals and a few multi-billion-dollar companies. He talks about asking the lowest level in your company, the bottom layer in your company, all the way up to the top, every layer in your company, a couple questions. What are we doing that is going really well? And Nem's just handed me a sticky note with Brad Jacobs. By the way, another great thing that you could do with your team, we were talking about pulling ideas, creating a book club and a reading club within your business. Me and a few of my team members, we read all of the same books. So when we're talking about ideas, it's so difficult to elaborate on an idea that we just read in a book. And this book went on.
Yeah,
exactly. And it's really difficult to digest those ideas sometimes on your own. And then it's also difficult to communicate on the same plane when you're talking about an idea that somebody elaborated on in a book. But if you've read the same book, then, you can kind of start talking about some of these ideas and our language starts to change. And some of the things that we talk about become universal. So there you go. Brad Jacobs, How to Make a Few $1 billion. We're talking about, hey, you're going to go to different layers in your company, especially at the bottom layer, especially with people that are typically not talked to within the business, so the frontline employees. And you're going to ask them, what are we doing really well? Number one, what's one thing that we're doing well that you've noticed that the company's actually excelling in? And what's one thing that we're really screwing up on? It's just a stupid idea, or you notice that, guys, why is it every day I'm doing this thing and it's totally wrong? Everybody else knows it except the upper management. And he found it fantastic that a lot of the companies that he was buying or investing into, they never asked. They never asked their frontline employees, what are we doing well and what are we doing really, really poorly? I think that's a great place to start. And the one idea, typically when you distill it down to one, you get usually the best idea. So one thing that's going well, one thing that's going poorly. And then I think just communicating within the same plane. So when I talk about the same plane, it's what is our common shared mission? What is our common shared goal? How can we all as a collective get there? What are some of the ideas and what are some of the things that aren't going well that are going to detract us from that path? But I also think there's one more thing that's important. I think there's a limit to collaboration. I really do. Sometimes companies, when they hear this, they start to collaborate too much with their team and with their people. Collaboration is fantastic. New ideas are fantastic. However, clarity is even more important. Clarity and focus in the right direction is even more important. If there's constant collaboration and nobody's in charge and everybody is going in different directions, that's also not good. So when you open up the dialogue, when you open up the collaboration, when you open up the conversation, you open up new ideas, you have to, at the end, distill it down to a clear direction, and a clear direction that is effectively dictated by one person. One person at the top. One person needs to be in charge. This is also problematic a lot of times when there's partnerships or when there's more than one person in the business.
Sure.
One person needs to be in charge and really clear on the direction of where it's going. And a lot of times that direction is going to be dictated on the temperament of that person. If that person is really experimental, if that person has a high risk tolerance, if they want to grow the business in a certain way, the most important thing that can happen is you communicate that with the rest of the team. You align the rest of the team on that, and then the rest of the team can provide ideas and feedback on how to grow the business and the mission in line with that direction. Instead of everybody setting their own direction, all of a sudden you're moving into 100 different pathways. Here's where we're going. I'm going to dictate exactly where we are going. Why? Because I have the highest view, the most zoomed out view of the business, and this is the mission that we're on. Great. You rally the people around. Here's all the things we're doing well. Here's all the things we're not doing well. And then you kind of create an environment where ideally the feedback is there to correct and to steer in the way that everybody already knows you're supposed to be going, because here's the North Star, and you put the North Star out there. So I think that's important with collaboration, feedback, but not a change of direction every time somebody wants to do something in a different way.
Yeah, good point. And staying on task and keeping up with what's mission critical to your ongoing success and what that 5-10-year plan looks like, if I'm hearing that correctly. Yeah, that's a great piece of feedback for small and budding and or maybe even companies just looking to make a turn into a new territory.
Or when you acquire a business, or when you merge with a business, or when you're bringing on a new segment and a new team. A lot of those things are at top of mind when that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So, not to shift gears too much, because I like where this conversation's going, but shifting gears just a bit in keeping up with the North Star, keeping up with what is mission critical, but also adapting to change and adapting to competition. So competition is and can lead to growth in the marketplace. So can those new innovations we've talked about throughout conversation today, how have you used tech, social media, as well as marketing and other tactics to balance some of that risk and keep up with the competition as a relatively, new company? I know you've been around for 12 years, but this 6 years have really been a part of your growth trajectory. So given that, how would you say some of those different tools and tech have really played into that, and how you've responded to competition as well as, the innovation side?
Yeah, it's interesting. We don't spend a lot of time focusing on competition. I think keeping up with competition is a big mistake. At least trying to keep up with competition. We're a lot of times we ask ourselves, where do we identify and where does our company fit? And when we don't have a clear answer and a clear benchmark with a competitor, usually that's a great place to be. Another great book to read, A Blue Ocean Strategy, which we talk about a lot within the business, is how do we carve our own space within the market? How do we create a blue ocean for ourselves? And how do we play within the intersect of a few different segments within the industry, where a company A is offering this clearly, and there's a large pool of competitors within that space. Company B, or companies like this demographic, this archetype, are offering certain things. How do we play between that, where there's certain solutions that we've identified a customer segment that is looking for certain solutions, their needs are not being met? How do we play within those margins? That's a great place for us to be. So the process that we go through is trying to identify exactly where our competitors are and trying to be in between the lines. There's several things that you could do to architect this, but specifically looking at tech and specifically looking at, the different platforms that you can use. I think content and awareness is important. I think technology is important. There's lots of different solutions out there. We're constantly evaluating and looking at our tech stack and trying to see what we can adopt. I do believe that the right technology that you have within the business, how much technology that you have within the business, isn't as important as the rate of technology adoption within your company. So that's something that we measure. What is our rate of technology adoption? So a new thing comes out, how quickly are we willing to adopt it? When we bring a new software within the business, how fast is that process for us to onboard that software, test it, and push it out? I believe that company A and company B, company A being a company that is really, really fast at adopting technology. So meaning they experiment very, very quickly. They go through tech fast. They can see if it's a fit for their business. As the business grows and new technology is needed, they can adopt it quickly as well, is always going to be company B that already has the most amazing tech stack in the world. And they have adopted the best technology out there. But then 2 years from now, a year from now, as they're growing, they need new tech. Tech changes, new platforms come out. They're slow to adopt. This thing is a constantly changing playing field. Today, we're going to have a conversation about the best tech that's out there. Here's the different apps that you can use. Here's what's available. Here's what we're using. Tomorrow, it's completely different and it's completely obsolete most of the time. And some of the things that you're using are going to be just fine, but some of them are going to need innovation. So how fast are we at turning around the software and the technology? What is our process for adoption? So right now, yesterday, we have a new piece of tech that we're planning to test. We're sitting down and we say, okay, so we're going to give this thing 30 days. Here's exactly our pipeline for how to test it. We're going to apply it in these different ways. And if it works, great, we'll adopt it. If not, we'll move on to something else. And then maybe next year, this same piece of technology, we're going to change. My guys are sometimes pushing back on this, and I understand it because it's really difficult to constantly be switching and changing, but that's what growth is. That's what experimentation is. We're going to try all these different things. How do we know if this platform is the best or if this one's the best? We need to continue trying and experimenting. So I think if you really want to be a company that is on the cutting edge, you need to have a high rate of experimentation and a high rate of technology adoption rather than trying to find the best software that's out there. So I would look specifically on what is your process for adopting new technology and finding new technology, and how do you put it into place? There's another cool idea that I was exploring recently, which is adding a CTO to the team.
Okay.
And I've kind of been exploring this, at least from just a fractional perspective. Adding a fractional CTO whose entire job would be, hey, let's go out there and find the technology that's out there right now in the industry, maybe also outside the industry. And what are a few things that we can adopt? And if they find one thing within 6 months, let's say that can save X amount, then they can easily justify their role. But that also goes into this conversation of the rate of adoption instead of here's what we use and here's kind of where we're at today. Because this thing is changing faster than any of us can keep up with. So.
Right. Yeah, that's just the world we live in, and how quickly things are changing is something that really I think will be a test of the future, is the adaptability of the marketplace. And not only that, but how quick some of these tech companies are adapting to the needs that we have too. That's a piece of feedback I get quite often is, hey, love this new tech, but these people don't really know snow, or they're not adapting well to the snow market. So that lends to your point, Mikhail, is like, hey, that's why there's a need for some change to say, this program's not really working out best for us. Let's pivot a little bit to make sure we're finding the program that works out best for us. I know that you just learned this new program, but let's find another program because XYZ is not working out for the industry right now. And I'm just trying to equip you, my people, with the best tools and resources to do the job and do it well and continue to march towards mission critical.
Yeah. And you know what? There's a last point on this that I wanted to make, which is the conversations that you have with your team when these things come up. It's an experiment. Yeah. We're a culture of experimentation. We're constantly experimenting, right? Just because we sat one day and we said, this is the absolute best software and it's going to solve all of our problems. And we spent hours and hours and hours working on it. Or here's a new business segment. It's an experiment. The amount of time that you've invested into an experiment does not always correlate with the result. You could spend hours and days and weeks and months on something that doesn't work out, and you can spend 1 second on something that is a great fit. We're constantly searching for a term that a lot of companies outside of our industry use, which is product market fit. What is the product market fit? We are the product, our business, our service is the product, the market is the market, and we need to find a fit constantly. When you find that fit, the growth is instant, it's seamless, and it's fluid. When you don't have that fit, it's constantly friction. And we've seen it in our business and our different companies. When there's not a right fit, and this goes for team members as well. This goes for software. This goes for what you're offering. When it's not a right fit, there's constant friction. When there is a right fit, it's seamless, it's fluid, and everything is going downhill. So I think it's always about, for us, trying to find that right space and that right rhythm and that right fit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And having the flexibility, I think, with the team to experiment.
Yeah. And explaining the need for that. And you mentioned the team, and that's a good segue into the next part of conversation is competition for commercial properties is obviously one part of our business. Competition for labor is probably the biggest piece of competition that we go up against. So whenever I talk about competition in some of these episodes of Snow Talk, it's not necessarily just about the competition for commercial properties or the people we're competing with in our backyard, but also, just competing for the best in labor to be a part of the team. And you mentioned there, just kind of in passing about the tech piece, also finding the right fits for your team to continue to grow. What are you all doing, and what are you seeing in the retention and in the recruitment and engagement for the best talent in the workplace and for the next generation of the workforce?
Yeah, I find talent usually comes in two buckets. It's either talent that is looking for a way out or talent that is looking for a way in. This is very indicative right in the interview process, or you're having conversations with the team when they're already within the company. Are they looking for a way into our business, into our industry, or are they looking for a way out of the space that they're in, the job that they're in, the industry that they're in? Are they looking for a way out? Typically, if they're looking for the way out, it's a bit of a red flag because maybe things aren't working out and they're just searching, but they're not looking for you, right? They're just looking to get out of a certain situation. And I think that can lead to a lot of people looking at the industry as a temporary stop. And this happens a lot.
Good point.
If they're looking for a way in, green flag. They're looking for a way into the industry. They're looking for a way into your company a lot of times. And then same with employees that you've already hired and team members you've already brought on board. Are they looking for a way out of the industry, out of the company, out of the environment that they're in? Or are they looking for a continuous way in and they want to go deeper, right? So they want to progress their career. They want to learn more. These are people that you need to be investing into. So I think the first stage for us is really identifying that. Who are the people that really want to be a part of the team and want to be part of the industry, right from the interview process and bringing them on board to continue to develop them. And then for those that do want to weigh in, what are we doing to develop them? So is there a program in place to individually develop the team members as individuals? Is there a program in place to develop the team and develop the culture within the company? Are we preparing them the right way for the work that they are going to be doing today? And is there somebody in place who is going to be preparing them for the work that we want them to be doing tomorrow? And we've seen this with our team where, a team member will join in at one level and our number one job becomes identifying who that person is and then pouring those resources into that person to help them continue to grow. And then as far as attracting that talent, I think first it's about creating the value within the company. What do we bring to the table? Why would this person who wants to enter the industry come and join our company? What do we have to offer? And there's some basics, obviously, you need to have in place, a good comp structure, benefits, etc. Those things are super important and you need to have those. And then from there, okay, the right environment, the right culture, certain key pieces of development, a strong mission, a strong set of values that your company is going to stand on. Those things are incredibly important, and a vibrant culture. From there, how do we communicate that value to this prospective talent, right? And then from there, how do we find exactly what I was talking about in the last segment, the right fit? Right. This is exactly the same process with clients. How do you create that value with your client? How do you communicate that value with your client? And how do you create the right fit with your client? It's the exact same process with your team. When you're working on creating that value, this is when you need to have a long, hard look in the mirror and say, okay, are the things that I'm communicating actually happening? And a lot of times it's a hard conversation because as I'm sitting here today and I'm talking about it, it doesn't mean that our business is perfect.
Right.
And everything that we have to offer for our clients and our team is perfect.
No.
And it's going to be the exact same thing for anybody listening. I don't care how big your company is. There are going to be lots of things that you need to work on within those categories. However, we're constantly working on creating that value. That is one of our values, to create that value. From there, how do we communicate that value? And a lot of it is based on awareness. Maybe it's social media. Maybe it's print. Maybe it's having a certain conversation. Maybe it's a referral program. What is the way that word is going to get out on what value you're creating? And then when that word gets out, what are they saying? Hey, Just for Snow is this, Just for Snow. Okay. So that's the reputation. And then from there, what's the right fit? I don't care if you're in your eyes and in the industry's eyes, the best company in the world. There are going to be people and there are going to be customers and clients who feel like you're the worst because it's just not a good fit. To some clients, you will be the best company and it's just going to be an amazing relationship and a great fit and you're going to flow so well with them. They're going to understand what you bring to the table. You're going to be solving their problem in a very unique way. The process of identifying those customers is the most important thing that you can do. Who are my customers? We have a very strong idea of our customer demographic. That's a great fit. Okay. Why? Because to these customers, we communicate this value and it's a great fit. Same thing with team. Who are the people that we need to bring within our company? What are they like? What are their tendencies? What's going to be the right fit with these people? And how can we create that value for them and create that fit? Constantly creating that fit. It's not going to be a one size fits all, and you're not going to be the company for everybody. You're going to be the company for a few select clients and a few select team members, and you're not going to be the company for everybody else. And you have to be willing to do that and to cut off a large segment of your clients, which we've done for 2-3 years in a row. We fired over 60-70% of our client base. We've gone through this process of cutting literally 70% of our clients one year. We cut out because it wasn't a right fit. And we've gone through the process of doing something similar, not to that scale, but something similar with our team. And I think it's a constant process that you're going to go through. Now we're really happy with both, but it's still not exactly where it needs to be. It's usually a process of cutting and bringing in instead of just, hey, let's constantly keep adding and then we'll kind of figure it out. No, it's about finding the right fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all really good points. And I think when the stars start to align is when you're seeing, hey, I've got the quality customer, the quality client that I want, but I've also got the team that responds to those customers' needs and the clients who then see how happy the team is and the culture that we have internally with our team whenever we're going out and removing snow or servicing their property, because those are the things that start to align, and then your customers are happy, your team's happy, and it's a great movement for future success and ways for the company to build on. At least that's what I hear from our members and what I hear from people who are doing and teaching classes that we have here at SIMA. So it sounds like when those things start to align, it may take time and it may be hard. Those decisions may not be easy, but that's when the stars start to align.
Yeah, and things start to flow. And it's not as much effort to result.
Right.
The effort to result ratio really goes down. We really saw that this year, where we were expecting, with the amount of effort, the amount of time that we put into the business, we were expecting to hit a certain number and a certain result. We ended up blowing past that, and then we ended up blowing past that again, just
awesome.
Organically from finding the right fit and finding those clients that are really going to build with us and work with us and grow with us. Same with the team. So it's a really strong place to get to, and it's going to mean saying no a lot more than you're saying.
Yep.
You're saying people, yes. Yeah, sure. Places. You're going to say yes in the beginning, right? Yeah. You say yes. Hey, let me evaluate the opportunities. But then it's a lot more about, okay, these things are us and these things are not us. And we're good with that.
Right. Yeah. Right people, right places, right seats on the bus. There's a good book called, I think it's called The Energy Bus, and it's by, I think, Jim Gordon. He talks about right people, right places, right seats on the bus to make sure that we continue to, excel as a company. And speaking of that acceleration, speaking of, taking a step back though, you said, hey, we said yes a lot in the beginning whenever we were on this growth trajectory. A lot of folks are listening to this podcast today and who will have this podcast shared with them are probably a small company. A lot of our members are small companies where a lot of people are wearing a ton of different hats. How have you been able to grow your business even when a certain facet of the business isn't your number one strength or isn't a member of your team's number one strength, to say, okay, we're wearing a ton of different hats. Nim's wearing a different hat. Mikhail's wearing a different hat, just to make sure that we are getting to that point where we can say no at some point, but knowing we have to say yes to kind of get things started. So how do you respond to that? And how do you think that small companies who are listening to this, looking to get to that trajectory, how do you think that they should respond to that? What lessons did you learn?
Yeah, we talk a lot about the speed and this momentum that you need to really get the business moving. And I know exactly what it's like to be in a space where every single year you're basically flat, or you're growing a little bit, but you're kind of in that space of wearing a million hats and being a small company. Certainly we were there for 6 years and more as we went into our 7th year. I think momentum is incredibly important. And momentum, I believe, is a function of risk. Without taking a certain amount of risk, I think creating that forward speed and that forward momentum is incredibly difficult. And certainly we did that in the beginning. We took a lot of risks. We said yes to certain opportunities in the beginning before we were ready. And if we look back at our biggest deals now and our biggest clients now, and now what for us is a core strength and a core competency, I'll give you a simple example of this. We have really been pushing our brand to be strong within the transit solutions.
Sure.
We've created a profit center within transit solutions. And we believe that we're, the best in the business now within Canada of supplying these transit solutions to various transit clients. How did we get here? Well, we said yes to a few opportunities that at the time were a massive risk and we weren't ready for. And it required multiple people on the team to wear the different hats and to go outside of their comfort zone in order to facilitate this type of a project. We said yes. We did a lot more work than we were supposed to in the beginning. We ended up creating an entire custom snow and ice management solution for a large transit project here in the city from scratch. We did work that we were not paid for. We went through challenges that we were not necessarily supposed to go through because we were supposed to already have the scope of work, but we had nothing in place and we're trying to figure this thing out. But we continue to work with the client, and we continue to work with our guys as they were getting frustrated on things not being in place. okay, so this is not here. This is not in place. We don't have a scope of work. We don't have everything clear. We're going to walk away. No, we didn't do that. We continued to work with it and continue to invest within the project. Throughout that time, throughout the last 5 years, we've learned a ton through working with this client and through working with then additional clients as a result of this one relationship. And now we could sit here and say, okay, through those 5 years, through all of the lessons that we've learned over the last 5 years working with this client, now we have, through that process, created that value of being able to offer that unique niche experience within this space of being able to take a transit project that is currently under construction and is going to be launched, developing a custom plan for them, developing a custom strategy for their snow and ice management needs, which is going to be unique for every single project. We've done it once, twice, 3 times now. We have the solution. We developed that through taking a massive risk, saying yes, the trial and error that was required, putting our team in a position where they needed to stretch a little bit. We created that value, and then we just went through this process of changing specific language that we use. Hey, Transit Solutions. Hey, we're going to introduce this new segment into our business and then communicate that value so that we can find the next segment of clients. So now when a transit client comes to us and they're looking for snow and ice management, we can say with confidence, we have the exact solution that you need. Why? Because we've already gone through this process and creating that value for you. We have a process of communicating that value so we can find more clients like that. And then that's going to be a key segment for us and a segment for our business. To go back to the original thought, yes, it required in the beginning to take the risk and to say yes. And I remember at the time, there was many people around me that were trying to pull back from going after this opportunity, because when we go back to the linear growth equation that we talked about in the beginning of the podcast, from a standpoint of linear growth, there were other areas of linear growth that we could have taken. This is a client that fits well with us and we've known this area and let's just stay here. No. When you're trying to create momentum, you have to say yes to opportunities that are going to be way outside your comfort zone and way outside your scope and way outside the comfort zone of your team. And there is no easy answer to this for me. Maybe somebody else has it figured out, but for me, it's about wearing every single hat that you can, working as hard as you can with your team and having the honest conversation with your guys of, hey, over the next 3 months, 6 months, you're going to be wearing 17 different hats. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be challenging. You're going to have to work longer hours than usual, and so am I, and we're going to have to take a massive risk on the business that may or may not pay off, and the business may be going in the wrong direction if things don't go well, but we have to take this risk because for us, staying in the same place that we are is not an option. We have to go to the next level. We have to just let go of this branch that we're on and honestly be in free fall. You can fall, you can fail, the team and the company can falter through this process. It is a reality and it is a possibility when you're taking these risks, but you have to be confident when you're making those decisions, communicate that with the team, and you're going to have to put the extra effort in that learning and growth process. And then once you're past that, once you're in the next phase, then you can slow down a little bit, slow down that momentum, slow down that risk, and then go to the next level. And again, when you want to keep going, when you want to keep growing, again, it's about increasing that risk. You increase the risk, you increase the speed, you increase the momentum. Every time risk goes up, those other two are also shooting up. You know, we talk about this a lot with the team as well. What's our zone? What's our zone of comfort as far as the risk tolerance? Because if we're towards the top of that zone all the time, it's going to be more stress, more pressure on the team, but more speed, and we're going to grow faster. Do we want to be there? Or do we want to be a little bit below? Or do we want to, for a period of time, coast a little bit on the bottom end of that risk spectrum and go? But when we want to be at the top and we want to be among the fastest growing companies in the space, which we currently are today, it means we're going to be riding the top of that risk tolerance for as long as possible to continue riding that wave of momentum. And then from there, we can kind of go back down. But understanding that equation in your mind and in the mind of your team is incredibly important. This is risky. This is about momentum. This is about speed. It's not always going to be a smooth ride. And the second that you think you're going to continue to grow at 5%, 10% a year, 2% a year, whatever the case may be, that's to me a riskier place to be because lots of things can happen. The industry is changing fast.
Yeah.
So we were really mindful of that. And I think being really open and honest with your team about that is the key, and not sugarcoating it.
Right. Yeah. That's an excellent answer, and something that I value is that transparency and saying, hey, there's going to be times whenever you're going to wear 10, 15 different hats, and we're going to be busting ass to get across the finish line and reach this goal. I think that I would have probably been thinking differently about this conversation if you had said, oh yeah, there's an easy answer. You wear the 15 hats, we navigate through it. And trust me, I'm someone that appreciates the calm, but knowing, hey, this is coming up, the storm's coming up. How do we weather it together is the sign of a leader, and saying like, hey, we recognize it's coming and we're going to have to weather it together. I think that that's, an excellent reminder is, hey, how do we go through some of this together so that we can grow exponentially, and not just in small ways. So that's awesome. And obviously it's evident, Mikhail, that Just for Snow has undergone some significant changes to get to this level. What's the trick in remaining optimistic? So going back to the beginning of conversation and you saying, hey, after 5 years, 6 years, I'm moving back into my parents' house. I'm living, I'm doing business rather out of the shed, and trying to see what the next 5 years has in store, and how do I jump in with 2 feet amidst all these challenges. We talked in the pre-call that there's been a ton of challenges in the logistics space, the sales space, the economy, the technological changes. All those things play a role in business, and you would kind of, no disrespect, maybe kind of hit rock bottom. How did you say, okay, I'm lifting myself up by the bootstraps and staying optimistic to go after these next 5 years, and not just closing the door and saying, hey, I'm going back to the bank?
Yeah, well, I definitely hit my rock bottom, but looking at because I immigrated here with my family, and I saw their rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when I was looking at my rock bottom and I was looking at their rock bottom, my rock bottom didn't seem so bad.
True perspective. Yeah.
And that perspective, I think, is incredibly important. Every single time that I hit a roadblock in the business, and we've hit many, and not just at that point in time, but we've hit several since. And I think that's a constant flow within the business. You're going to hit certain roadblocks. Maybe you're not going to go right to the bottom a lot of times, but you're going to get pretty close. And certainly I've done this. You search for that perspective. You zoom out.
Sure.
You zoom out and you try to see the business from a bird's eye view. And for me, I always have that example where I can look and say, what was their struggle? What was their rock bottom? What was, what did they have to go through to put me in this position where I can go out and pursue these things? A lot of times when we're pursuing our goal, to me, pursuing a business and being in this industry is an absolute privilege. I'm sitting here and I'm freely pursuing what I believe to be my path, and I have a certain freedom to pursue that. I don't take that lightly. I think there's a lot of people my age in different parts of the world that don't have that opportunity, and very few people do. And certainly I've been to enough places, and I've come from an environment where most people don't have that opportunity. So that's always the perspective that I go back to. And I have a prime example right there of my family, and I always look to that. Beyond that, I think when we're not just sitting at rock bottom and trying to pull ourselves up, it's about zooming out, and I think thinking about what we want the business and what we want on a personal level as well, our lives as entrepreneurs to look like, instead of just always fixating on the problems. I think, yes, you focus on the next problem that's ahead of you. But usually when you're close to rock bottom, or when you're close to that next challenge, then the only thing you can think about are the problems, maybe the mountain of problems that are ahead of you. And this is certainly a position that I find myself in quite often. Hey, what's the next issue? I'm obsessing over the next problem to fix in the business. I'm not sleeping at night trying to think about the next thing to get right. But I think it's also important to spend an equal amount of time thinking about what I want things to look like. What are things going to look like when they're going well? What is that North Star? What does it actually look like when those problems go away? Is there a vision of that you can paint? And I think we discount how much that vision fades, and how much we need to consistently feed back into that bucket and give back to ourselves the idea of that future truth that we want to create. So every time I'm fixated on the problems, every time I'm fixated on the issues, I try to intentionally zoom out, which is difficult, but you could do that by changing your environment, going somewhere, out in nature, maybe taking a couple days, maybe taking a trip, maybe going to a different space, and just zooming out and trying to think about, okay, here's where we are now, perfect, but let me spend a whole bunch of time thinking about what we want to be and trying to clearly picture that state where all of the problems are gone. And what does that look like? Okay, this is exactly what it looks like here. Now let's work backwards and create some of the steps to get there. And again, sometimes those steps aren't clear. Sometimes the process isn't clear. Sometimes where you want to be isn't clear. But to me, I think it's about staying in that positive frame of mind as much as possible and staying away from the problems as much as possible and having enough of a perspective that what we're doing here as business owners, as entrepreneurs in some of the most prosperous places in the world is an absolute privilege. And it's something that we should not be taking for granted. And this is far from rock bottom. In fact, this is multiple layers up from rock bottom in an environment where you don't even have the opportunity to go out and pursue your dreams. So there is really nothing in front of you. This isn't even bottom. You have a lot more room to go down, which thankfully you're not, which means this is only a springboard for you to go up. There's so much space for you to explore ahead. We cannot be, as business owners in this industry, within these types of economies and these types of environments, ever have our head down as if we don't have the opportunity to improve and to grow. We have that. All you need to do is focus on the positive. Focus on the space that you want to get to. Where do you want to be? Do you want to be, okay, what exactly do you want? How many team members do you want to have? What color are your trucks? What does your facility look like? Who are your clients? Where are you doing business? Where are you vacationing? How are you spending your time with your family? And what are the things that your business is actually giving you in a positive way? Let's create a list of all of those things and let's get obsessed, because I think a lot of times entrepreneurs have very obsessive personalities. Certainly I do. Let me get obsessed with the good instead of get obsessed with the bad. Yeah, let me have an obsession with the good side of the business and constantly visualizing and creating that future truth, trying to manifest that future truth and trying to have that clear picture in my head. And I have it. And as soon as it starts to fade a little bit, that's when I feel like I'm failing and when I'm at rock bottom, when I don't have that clear picture of the future in my head. So I think it's important to stay within both and spend enough time on both, fixing the problems and trying to find what the solution is going to look like for you in the future.
Yeah. Good points, Mikhail, because clarity is king. Clarity is key to a lot of this and a lot of scalable growth, small scale, large scale, whatever your goals may be as a business owner, as you listen, that clarity and vision is in your vision, is key. So Mikhail, I just want to thank you for your time today. It's been really thought-provoking and eye-opening for me, and I hope that our listeners feel the same way after listening to today's episode. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. It's a pleasure Yeah, you're welcome. And to learn from you and your business. And if you're listening and you like today's episode, be sure to share it with a colleague or industry peer and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Mikhail, any parting words or anything you want to share in terms of getting a hold of you? I know we just scratched the surface, but if folks say, hey, I really want to learn about how this Mikhail and Just for Snow property services are continuing to grow, where can they reach you? Where can they get a hold of you? And what final thoughts do you have?
Yeah, the best place to get hold of me is redefinebluecollar.com. Okay. Redefine Blue Collar is our mission that we've started to redefine the industry for the next generation of talent. It's an education company. There's a big pipeline there with media and a few other legs that we're working on, but it's really a mission first. It's a movement first. And from there, we're going to materialize that within a couple different mediums. So Redefine Blue Collar is certainly the best place. Outside of that, I think my message to anybody who is in this industry is double down. Double down. The industry itself is growing. There are a lot more people exiting the industry than are coming in. Mm-hmm. And, perspective a lot of times is hard to see when you're deep in the problems. This industry is on the rise. If you're a young entrepreneur or you've been in the industry for a few years, and maybe you're spinning your tires, double down. The best thing that I ever did in the business is put both feet in. And from the second that I put both feet in, we've been on a completely different trajectory, and the business and the industry has opened up opportunities that I didn't even know were out there. So I'm a massive proponent of the space. I think anybody who right now is listening doubles down is going to see only good things and only positive growth in the future. Every year, I think the space is getting more and more exciting. It's getting more and more innovative. There's a lot of bright minds that are in the space. And the second thing I would say is go out and find a peer group, go out and find educational workshops, educational seminars. Certainly join SIMA and get deeper into that community. Educate yourself, join your peers, and double down in every single way possible within the space. That's what we're doing. That's what we've done from the last few years, and it's paid massive dividends. And that is essentially the essence of our mission as well. How do we bring new talent into the industry and give them all of the tools that they need to be successful? And how do we create a different perspective for this industry, for other people that are outside looking in, and actually communicating the attractiveness and the value that this industry can provide? So double down.
Yeah, double down and share what makes this industry so special. I know that that's part of what you're doing with Redefine Blue Collar. And again, we just scratched the surface of your business journey. We'd love to have you back as a repeat guest sometime in the future to learn more about, that second arm of your business, if you will, with Redefine Blue Collar. But I really appreciate you, Mikhail, and I really appreciate you joining us and sharing part of this journey. I think it's important for the industry to hear from folks that are doing it, are growing and doing it successfully, not only in the continental U.S., but obviously in Canada. We love our members and neighbors to the north. So we really do appreciate everything you're doing to be involved with SIMA and then, just to uplift the industry in that next generation. So Mikhail, thank you. And for folks listening, I hope you enjoyed. Thanks to our sponsors over at Western and Fisher, as well as SnowX, for being sponsors of today's episode. And Mikhail, I look forward to having you back on soon.
Thank you so much.
You're
Likewise.
welcome. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Snow Talk, sponsored by Western, Fisher, and SnowX. Check out all of our episodes at sima.org/podcast.